Excluder was CE marked in 1997, and we commercialized it in Europe at that time. And so we had quite a number of implants prior to commercializing in the US, and also a clinical trial that was behind us. And right about that time, we started to receive reports of aneurysm enlargement through that study. But through working with you and other physicians, we eventually realized that we actually did have an issue with aneurysm enlargement that we needed to address at that time, which led to the low permeability modifications with the device.
Wasn't that part of the characteristics of ePTFE, that you can actually make it in so many different forms that the permeability can be changed very easily?
Yeah, exactly. At the time, the reason it was so difficult to understand is because our experience with surgical vascular grafts, and you're right, they're actually very permeable, they allow for tissue ingrowth. We actually had abdominal grafts on the market for a decade. And GORE didn't have any reports of serous fluid migration through those grafts that caused any patient issues. So we naturally chose that same microstructure for our endovascular graft, thinking that there were no issues related to permeability with those devices.
It's interesting that you say that you could not quite understand what was going on, yet you came up with a solution pretty fast, because I remember we were having these discussions in 2002, 2003, and by 2004, we already had a new device.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It took us about 6 to 9 months to figure out what was going on. And within 3 months, we had 180 prototypes, and another couple of months later, we had 1 prototype, and we rapidly moved to commercialization with a fix. From your perspective, why was it important to fix this issue?
Well, as you know, that most of these patients were coming back every year at least to get a follow-up visit, and at each follow-up visit, you tell them that their aneurysm is larger. And it was not entirely clear at the time whether this will ultimately lead to rupture or not. So clearly that led to the anxiety among the patients on the physician's side, sometimes increased follow-up, sometimes conversions that were not necessary. So clearly avoiding this seroma and expansion of the aneurysm was clearly a very important thing to achieve.
Dr. Macaroon, when the excluder device, the low permeability excluder device was made available in 2004, what gave you confidence that we had fixed the issues?
The bench testing that you showed us at the time clearly showed that the permeability of the new low permeability device was significantly lower than the original device. I think you moved fast, you recognized the problem, and you brought us a new device that we hope will be improvement in the care of the patients. But we still were going to check it out, and actually we checked it out on 2 subsequent occasions. One at the 1-year mark after we enrolled a fair number of patients between us and Northwestern. We teamed up to be able to have enough patients to know whether clinically the problem is solved, but the 1-year mark was not going to be necessarily the end point, so we reviewed them also at 5 years, a few years later, and it clearly showed that the problem had been solved. You were reaching the same target of shrinkage and expansion that we would expect from most effective EVAR devices.
And that's still the only real change that we made to the implantable device to date. We've made modifications to the deployment system, but really the main body implantable has remained largely unchanged in 20 years.
It is amazing that that actually remains the same. For somebody who's been involved with devices for over 27, 28 years, this is the only, I would say, constant that we have seen over time, and gives you confidence.